Hello, and greeting from the Almond Board's Global Technical and Regulatory Affairs team. My name is Geoffrey Bogart, and my role at the Almond Board is to help our handlers and traders navigate the often turbulent waters of global market access and the many manifestations of technical barriers to trade. It is my pleasure to be the moderator for this conference session entitled Report from the Trenches Overseas, a roundtable discussion with Foreign Agricultural Service officers. As you may know, almost 70% of California's almonds are exported to points east and west, north and south. And while most shipments make it to their customers overseas with no disruptions, some consignments get held up in foreign ports due to a myriad of reasons. Delayed or rejected consignments are not only inconvenient, but are costly to handlers, traders, and their customers. Key to the ABC's ability to address global regulatory issues in real time is the support provided by the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service officers. Ag diplomats in the field help ABC identify, address, and even sometimes resolve global regulatory issues and technical barriers to trade, such as labeling requirements, port inspection protocols, certificates of origin issues, market access blocks, and many others. We have assembled for you an interesting cross section of foreign ag service officers from markets both big and small who will share unique insights into the issues they address and how they work in concert with the Almond Board to address them. Panelists will discuss short and long term issues in their markets and even address some of the success they've had along the way. You'll hear from Mr. Morgan Perkins, Agricultural Minister Counselor at the U.S. Embassy in Tokyo, Mr. Bruce Zanin, Agricultural Minister Counselor at the U.S. Mission to the European Union in Brussels, Ms. Justina Torry, Ag Attaché at the U.S. Embassy in Algiers, Algeria, and Ms. Jeanne Bailey, former Minister Counselor in New Delhi and currently Deputy Administrator for Trade Policy and Geographic Affairs in Washington, D.C. for the Foreign Ag Service. So let's get started. On behalf of our panelists, thank you for joining us. Arigato, merci, and shukran.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Morgan Perkins, and I work with the Office of Agricultural Affairs in Japan. For those of you who haven't worked with us yet, the Foreign Agricultural Service has 3 offices here in Tokyo and Osaka. The Office of Agricultural Affairs at the Embassy in Tokyo works on trade policy and regulatory issues that concern the almond industry, while our 2 agricultural trade offices, one in Tokyo, one in Osaka, work hand in hand with the Almond Board and individual companies in order to help develop the market and create partnerships with Japanese buyers and end users. Most of you probably know that Japan is the 3rd largest market for U.S. almonds overseas after the EU and India. Generally speaking, almond exports to Japan are going to total between 35 and 45,000 metric tons per year, with a value between $225 and $325 million. And the almond market peaked here a few years ago in 2015, before dipping off a bit, but has been trending back upward the last couple of years. And in 2019, total almond shipments to Japan were about 40,000 metric tons, worth $275 million or so. But perhaps most importantly, the U.S. almond industry has a 97% market share here in Japan. We really provide almost every almond that's coming into the country. Australia does ship some almonds here, but really it's a dominant market position for the California industry. And Japan is a high quality and reliable buyer with steady volumes. And I know that the trade between California and Japan is characterized by a lot of long-standing and steady partnerships. Now, if we look back more than just a few years, a couple of decades or so, what we see is steady growth in almond consumption in Japan. That's a result of dietary diversification as Japanese consumers really expand the types of foods that they're eating. There's particularly a lot of use of almonds in the bakery industry here. And that increase in consumption of almonds has occurred despite ongoing demographic decline in Japan as the population slowly trends downwards. But for almonds, there's prospects for continued growth due in large part to increasing diversification of how people consume almonds. In particular, almond milk has been growing very quickly in recent years, and there's strong potential due to messaging that almonds have to offer on health and beauty benefits of consuming almonds. Nonetheless, in recent years, we have faced a couple of major challenges. One was that almonds did face some substantial tariffs coming into the Japanese market. More on that in just a little bit, not as much of an issue now. And the second challenge that we've been facing is an increasing frequency of aflatoxin detections in shipments of California almonds coming into Japan. Unfortunately, when there is an aflatoxin detection, the shipment is rejected outright and has to return to the U.S. or onward to another destination. No in-market remediation is possible, and there's no tolerance for aflatoxin, which means that for each shipment coming here, there's a risk of a detection and rejection, which adds uncertainty and cost into doing business in Japan. If you'll see on the slide, we've seen a lot of variability from year to year. In particular, in 2018, we saw quite a large number of aflatoxin rejections, causing a great deal of expense and inconvenience for the industry. But going back a little bit to the trade policy side, we've had a lot of success over the past year on that front. Just about a year ago, we were able to finalize phase one of a trade agreement with Japan, the USJTA, which led to immediate elimination of tariffs on all almond exports to Japan. Australia had already been shipping all tariff-free to Japan, but U.S. fresh or dried almonds had been paying a 2.4% tariff, and roasted almonds a 5% tariff. As of January 1st, 2020, those tariffs were eliminated. In addition, we had some even better news on almond products. Almond flour tariffs had been at 15%, went through a substantial reduction on January 1st and are slated to be completely eliminated within 3 more years. So April 1st of 2024, all tariffs on almond flour from the U.S. will be eliminated. Likewise, tariffs on almond milk are being eliminated over a 3-year period. So actually, April 1st of 2021, those tariffs will be eliminated. And almond milk with no sugar had been paying a 9.5% tariff, while almond milk with sugar had been paying a 13.4% tariff. So, you know, that was a substantial barrier. So we look forward to almond producers in California having the opportunity to keep a little bit more of the value added at home and ship higher value products to Japan. It may affect, of course, the export volumes of whole nuts, but a good opportunity nonetheless for the almond industry. On the aflatoxin front, we're currently working with the Almond Board to find a way to reduce the cost and uncertainty of aflatoxin controls. I'm talking to you today in Japan on November 17th. So we've got a few weeks before the Almond Conference, but later this week, Wednesday, California time, Thursday, Japan time, we'll be holding consultations with Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare to discuss the 100% testing requirement for almonds coming into Japan. Important to know that every shipment of almonds coming into Japan is tested for aflatoxin. This is based on government of Japan requirement that for any product susceptible to aflatoxin, there's a 100% testing protocol upon arrival. That applies obviously to almonds, also to peanuts, corn, and other products that might be derived from them, like peanut butter. And with aflatoxin being a naturally occurring toxin, it's liable to be present in almost any shipment. So positive findings do occur even when the product has been sampled and tested prior to departure. Just differences in sampling methodology and where you take the sample may lead to a detection. And that has injected a lot of uncertainty for almond exporters into dealing with the Japanese market. Right now, Japan does not allow any in-market treatment for a shipment that has been found to be positive for aflatoxin. So the cost of returning almonds to the U.S. can be high. Remediation after a positive finding would have to take place in the U.S. or a third market, not possible here. And we're going to be working to try and solve that problem, make it a little bit easier for everybody to ship to Japan. So this coming week we have consultations, including the participation of Japan's Ministry of Health, Labor and Welfare, the Agricultural Marketing Service from USDA, USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and the Almond Board, all coming together to look at Japan's sampling and testing protocol, the problems that it's causing for the U.S. industry, and try to identify ways in which we could reduce the burden on almond exporters from California. I'm sure you'll be hearing an update on this from Julie Adams and others at the Almond Board when you have the live conference. We believe that this meeting is going to be a first step in perhaps some extended discussions, but we have a commitment to finding a solution that's going to bring down the uncertainty and cost of shipping to this market. Meanwhile, the agricultural trade offices continue to work closely with the Almond Board in order to promote almonds. And we've done that in the coronavirus environment by going virtual. We've shifted from live in-person cooking classes that we were doing on a regular basis that would reach perhaps several thousand consumers throughout the year and get us placement in some mainstream media, to going to virtual online cooking classes. And we've had a lot of success with that. We worked with some very influential YouTube personalities, and we did a series of cooking classes focused on the use of nuts, particularly almonds, in the Japanese kitchen. And we've racked up, I believe so far this year, over 400,000 views. So it's been a positive experience as we shift away from in-person classes to try and promote almonds in the new stay-at-home environment. In closing, just want to reassure everybody that the Foreign Agricultural Service is here in Japan, working with the almond industry on a variety of fronts. We wish you all the best of luck in the conference and the best of luck this year shipping. Thank you for allowing us to participate, and we look forward to continuing to work with you in the coming year and into the future and building the market for California almonds. Thank you very much.
Good morning and welcome from Washington, D.C. My name is Jeanne Bailey, and I am currently the Deputy Administrator for the Foreign Agricultural Services Trade Policy and Geographic Affairs Program Area. Prior to taking this position in August of this year, I had the privilege of serving as the Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs at the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi, India. And of course, India is the largest market for California almonds. So it was a great privilege to get to be there and to learn more about this top export product to India. Now, before I talk about some of the issues that we worked on with the Almond Board of California on behalf of California almond producers and shippers and exporters. I wanted to just step back and say congratulations to the Almond Board of California for your amazing and sustained outreach and your ability to develop relationships and to grow those and further those around the globe with the international import community. Now, I have heard it said that the private-public partnership between the US government and our cooperator partners is possibly, arguably, the most successful partnership of its kind. And I believe that's not only true, but I believe the Almond Board of California is an excellent example of how US agricultural industry, its representative trade association, and the US government can work together to further and promote and develop the interests of our farming community in the international marketplace. Now, you may have already heard, or you're going to hear over the course of this conference from my colleagues in Japan and Algeria and Belgium. And while we all are going to have different issues that come up with almond imports, we're all going to have in common the fabulous relationship that we enjoy with the Almond Board of California. And that goes back to that public-private partnership where Foreign Agricultural Service officers, whether we are working with our colleagues back in Washington or we are assigned to a post overseas, that most important link is with our trade associations, working hand in glove with them to develop markets for US food and agricultural products. In the case of India, again, I mentioned that it is the largest export market for California almonds in the world. In fact, in 2019, our almond exports were nearly a record $800 million in calendar year 2019, which is almost 40% of all of the food and agricultural exports that we shipped to India in 2019. So that's really an amazing fact. And just looking at 2020, in the first 9 months of 2020, our tree nut exports, of which almonds were the predominant product, were up 11%. Now, that's really impressive, particularly given how difficult 2020 has been for trade. Our exports to India, first 9 months, have grown 11% compared to the same period in 2019. And one of the reasons, a primary reason, that our trade is able to grow is because of that relationship and the trade servicing that the Almond Board of California has brought to the international marketplace. But while I was in India, there were I'd like to touch briefly on 3 different issues that we worked on with the Almond Board of California to help increase and address issues that were keeping our almond exports from being as high and successful as they could be. One such issue looks at the food safety regulations. Just like every country has food safety regulations, we have our Food and Drug Administration. In India, there's an organization called the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, and they have jurisdiction over imports of food. And for years, they have had draft standards in place that put a percentage limit on the numbers of chips and scratches that can be on an almond kernel. And they will reject shipments if kernels have over a certain percentage of chips and scratches. Well, a chip or a scratch, specifically for an almond that's going to even go into further processing, and even if it's not, a chip or scratch is not a food safety issue. It is a grading issue, but it's not a food safety issue. So for years, the Almond Board of California has consistently been engaging with the Food Safety Standards Authority of India to work on education, to share that information on standards, and also to take every step possible to ensure that Government of India officials had a chance to see our grading system and to better understand what we were doing here in the United States and why we did not believe that the chips and scratches are a food safety issue, but more of a grading issue. Almond Board of California has consistently brought that training, shared that training, and worked with the Office of Agricultural Affairs at the U.S. Embassy to ensure that that information is shared widely and broadly across the government of India. Now, unfortunately, the government of India has not retracted its chips and scratches limitation, but nonetheless, because of the Almond Board of California's persistent engagement on this issue, it has kept chips and scratches from becoming an even bigger deterrent to our exports. A recent issue that came up in July was on certificates of origin, and this significantly related to U.S. exports of almonds to India. Now, the certificate of origin that the government requires has been coming in no problem with almond shipments for years. For some reason, in July of this year, the government, the same organization, the Food Safety Standards Authority of India, began to look at certificates of origin coming in and began to ask questions about, the formats looked different, who were the issuing authorities. And so our office reached back to the Almond Board of California, and there was a period of time we were connecting every week to talk about how we were engaging the information that we were sending back to the Food Safety Standards Authority of India. We were leveraging the information that the Almond Board of California was also providing on this issue. And while it has not been resolved, because of the information we were able to provide, our almond exports to India are still coming in. It's a constant leaning in and engaging. And while these issues pop up suddenly, unfortunately, it often takes months and sometimes even years to address them. But again, one of the things that I so admire about the Almond Board of California is that they are there for the long run. And through their superlative trade servicing and building of relationships, they are able to have these conversations. And in working with the Offices of Agricultural Affairs around the globe, they're able to have those conversations and help foreign officials better understand our grading system, the top quality of our producers, and the top quality of our food safety. But that educational piece is so important to ensuring that we maintain and expand our agricultural exports. Now, sometimes we have an issue and we are able to help get it resolved and have a successful ending. In another example this summer, we had issues with the valuation of taxes that were being levied on almond imports coming in. And unfortunately, the tax authorities at the biggest port in India, where the majority of our almonds come in, were using outdated values of almonds. When the almond production was lower, almond prices were higher, and the officials were taxing the higher valued almonds from several years ago. Well, obviously that's a problem. It's not accurate, and it was adding costs to importers that simply in a tough market was really unsustainable. So my office was able to gather agricultural trade data from the National Agricultural Statistics Service that showed the bumper crop coming out of California and showing that these are price series. We were able to share that information with the port authorities and ask them to simply put aside and use more up-to-date, more realistic price series. And I'm happy to say that in this example, they agreed to do so. But again, we talked with industry, we came up with a plan on how to address the issue, and then working together, we approached our government counterparts, and in this case, we had a successful resolution. So again, those are just 3 quick examples of some of the issues that we work on overseas on behalf of California almond producers and exporters. But the constant in all of that is our partner, the Almond Board of California. And it's really a pleasure to work with ABC, and I look forward to continuing that relationship while I'm back here in Washington. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to North Africa, specifically Algeria. Algeria is currently the largest country on the continent, geographically speaking. 4/5 of Algeria is home to the Sahara Desert, making agriculture production a challenge. Hydrocarbons have long been the backbone of the economy, accounting for roughly 30% of GDP, 60% of budget revenues, and 92.8% of export earnings. And these are figures from 2019. The agriculture sector is one of the priority sectors for the government in its efforts to diversify the economy and attract foreign domestic investment outside of the energy sector. Algeria has about 8.5 million hectares of arable land, and for that reason, Algeria's imports of agriculture commodities and food represented about 19% of the total imports in 2019. That's about $8 billion. Hydrocarbon exports enabled Algeria to maintain macroeconomic stability, amass large foreign currency reserves, and maintain low external debt while global oil prices were high. However, following the decline in oil prices, the government of Algeria implemented several import substitution measures to curb imports and preserve the outflow of hard currency reserves. With that introduction, I would like to address 3 topics: the Algerian trade environment, regulatory issues with almonds, successes working with the Almond Board, and Algerian almond consumption. First, the trade environment. The first thing that comes to mind when I think about international trade is the World Trade Organization and its set of rules that governs international trade for its 164 members. The WTO's focus is on the reduction of tariffs and addressing barriers to trade. Well, the one characteristic that sets Algeria apart from the other countries represented on this panel is that Algeria is not a member of the WTO. To that end, to control spending and offset the drop in energy earnings, the government of Algeria is pursuing a strategy to control imports and protect domestic production. As such, over the past few years, Algeria has implemented numerous import substitution policies in an effort to limit imports. For example, in July 2017, the government of Algeria implemented an import quota system for a long list of products, many of which were ag products, and tree nuts were included in that quota system. Then, in January of 2018, the government of Algeria replaced the import quota system with a complete ban on over 1,000 products and over 800 of those products were agriculture products. Now let's fast forward to January 2019. This import ban was replaced with a temporary additional duty ranging anywhere from 30 to 120%. The items subject to this temporary additional duty were often more inclusive than previous lists. In fact, 60% of the items on that list were food items. The most current list remains applicable. However, it removes the 30% additional duty on tree nuts and the 70% additional duty on peanuts. Now keep in mind, all imports are still subject to an existing 30% customs duty and a 19% value-added tax. Fortunately, there are no additional regulatory issues with almonds or tree nuts with regard to sanitary, phytosanitary, or other technical barriers to trade. Despite all of these challenges, though, 85% of the almonds entering Algeria are of U.S. origin. Next, I would like to share one of my experiences working with the Almond Board. One of the many reasons for the existence of the Foreign Agricultural Service and its many offices around the globe is to work closely with cooperator groups like the Almond Board. Together, we develop and expand markets overseas. As your eyes and ears on the ground, we analyze and report on situations that impact U.S. agricultural trade. For example, this past August, the Foreign Agricultural Service office in Algeria was contacted by the Almond Board and an exporter requesting assistance with an issue concerning 2 Algerian importers. The issue was related to almond shipments that were unpaid and detained at the port of Algiers. Working with the Almond Board, FAS Algiers secured the contact information for the Algerian buyers. We then contacted the buyers. We reached out to the Algerian Ministry of Agriculture, to the Algerian Ministry of Commerce, and the Algerian port officials to fully understand the reason for the detained shipment. We learned that the Algerian buyers were not able to domicile the shipment as they were impeded by the Algerian banks from withdrawing the documents to complete the payment. Effectively, this issue was related to a new government banking decision designed to curb imports on a specific list of 13 produce items. And unfortunately, almonds was one of the items on the list. The government of Algeria decision was not announced officially via decree. However, it was guidance given to banks that was effective July 12, 2020. As a result, the Algerian banks blocked domiciliation documents and all almond shipments were detained. Fortunately, our interventions were successful and we were able to secure the release of all containers that were detained or en route to Algeria prior to the issuance of the July 12, 2020 banking guidance. But this story is not over. FAS Algiers continues to engage the government of Algeria regarding this ban. We're optimistic that the demand for U.S. almonds will positively influence the modification or repeal of this ban. FAS Algiers continues to work with our colleagues in FAS Washington, with the USDA Secretary for Trade and Foreign Agricultural Affairs, and the United States Trade Representative to urge the Algerian government to repeal or modify the almond ban. Next, I'd like to spend 2 brief minutes to talk to you about Algerian almond consumption. One observation that I've made while on the ground here in Algeria is unlike in the United States, where almonds are commonly eaten as a healthy snack or further processed into flour or used in the health food industry, almonds and other tree nuts are a bit of a luxury item in Algeria. Almonds are primarily used in traditional dishes and desserts. Almonds are common in dishes like Lachlu, which is literally translated sweet meat. This is a lamb dish that incorporates dried fruits, apricots, plums with sugar, cinnamon, butter, and orange blossom water. Almonds are also very common to traditional Algerian desserts, like pâte d'almond or baklava, which is one of my personal favorites. These treats are often eaten at celebrations such as weddings or religious gatherings. In closing, I would like to say that despite the import substitution challenges of the Algerian market, there is tremendous potential for almonds. The reality is Algerians love almonds and domestic production does not meet domestic demand. Furthermore, U.S. almonds have a reputation of being of high quality, and the U.S. is perceived as a reliable supplier in this market. To continue to expand U.S. almond exports to Algeria, I invite you to come to Algeria to meet with importers, to taste Algerian dishes and desserts made with almonds, so that together we can introduce additional uses for almonds and expand U.S. almond exports to Algeria. Merci et bon appétit.
Hello, my name is Bruce Zanin, and I'm the Minister Counselor for Agricultural Affairs at the U.S. Mission to the European Union in Brussels, Belgium. I work for USDA's Foreign Agricultural Service. Brussels is a long way from where I grew up in San Diego, from UC Riverside, where I went as an undergrad, and from UC Davis, where I went to grad school. And it's a pleasure for me to talk to a group of California almond growers and handlers. As you probably know, the EU is a great market for almonds. The value of exports to the EU in 2019 was about $1.25 billion, and will probably be even higher this year. If you ship almonds to Europe, you know it can be complicated. FAS Brussels, along with the other FAS offices across the EU and Washington, D.C., and the Almond Board of California, work together to minimize the complications and keep the flow of almonds coming. Let's take a step back. Why is it complicated to ship to the EU? It's because the detailed rules that all exporters to the EU have to abide by are set up by the European Commission institutions, in this case, the Director General for Health and Food Safety, DG Sante, while it is the individual member state authorities who enforce these rules. So the EU sets the rules, while member state inspectors, following their own country's rules, enforce the EU's rules. So when you have a trade issue, very often there's both an EU and a member state aspect to it. In addition, the EU has extremely strict food safety requirements, but that's another story. Before going on, I need to say that because of the hard work of the California almond industry and the Almond Board of California, the excellent quality of California almonds is unassailable. In fact, the trade issues faced by almonds are much less than those for other U.S. agricultural products. You're doing great, despite the EU's complicated system. Let's drill down a bit. DG Sante is the direct counterpart of FAS in Brussels. Sante sets the rules and keeps the data on violations from across the EU. FAS spends much of our time advocating for you with DG Sante. And this advocacy is a mix of day-to-day monitoring of reports and meeting minutes, informal contacts with the Commission, and formal letters to the Commission with the official U.S. government position on a variety of issues. Here are some examples that apply to almonds. The RASFF distribution of notifications, RASFF, R-A-S-F-F, the Rapid Alert System for Food and Feed, is the official EU database where the info on non-compliance is recorded. Anytime a member state has a non-compliant food safety finding, they upload the data to RASFF. FDA normally would be the competent authority to check RASFF, but they're not as involved as we are, so we have an agreement with the Commission and FDA that FAS monitors the system. So FAS Brussels, my office, monitors the RASIF system, and extracts info that specifically applies to almonds, California almonds. We communicate that information to the Almond Board of California, and when the Almond Board of California responds, we make sure that that response gets it to the DG Sante, to the correct office, in a timely manner. We also push to improve RASIF procedures. Like all systems, RASIF is not perfect, and sometimes non-compliance findings are attributed to an export product incorrectly. With the Almond Board of California, we have worked diligently to minimize these types of findings against California almonds. Let me specifically talk for a few minutes about the pre-export check system. The pre-export check system, or the PEC system, for aflatoxin controls in almonds has been officially recognized by the EU. This is a government-to-government recognition. And in this case, because of the federal marketing order, the Almond Board of California has a quasi-governmental role. So they can work with us in ways that not all industries can, with at least an association. But FAS Brussels is the official point of contact for the Commission and has been on the PEC system from the get-go and from before PEC. As you may recall, in the marketing years 2017 and 2018, there were increased findings of aflatoxin, and there was an increasing number of RASIF non-compliance notifications on aflatoxin. The EU considered canceling the PEC system. FAS Brussels, working closely with the Almond Board of California, explained to the Commission the circumstances behind the increased findings, which were weather-related, if you'll recall. We convinced the Commission to temporarily suspend the pre-export check. And they instituted increased inspections, but for a limited period of time. Believe me, this took a lot of work because many member states were requesting that the PEC system be suspended indefinitely. Because of the long-term investment in relationship building by the Almond Board of California and my office with DG Sante, we were able to stave off the member states. This behind-the-scenes work maintained the integrity of the PEC system so that when weather conditions improved, aflatoxin levels went down, and the number of RASIF findings went down, the inspection rate went down. And as you know, fewer inspections lead to fewer findings. This is statistical, it has nothing to do with quality or food safety. We've also got an issue with goods returned under the new official controls regulations. Some of you may be familiar with this issue in Spain. Basically, Spanish authorities are interpreting new wording from a December 2019 rewording of the EU official controls regulation to mean that non-compliant shipments cannot be returned to point of origin. FAS Madrid has worked the issue in Spain. FAS Brussels is working the issue in Brussels with the Commission. We convinced the Commission that it needed to better explain to the member states that return of non-compliant shipments to point of origin is still possible under the newly worded official controls regulations. This brings me to another ongoing problem where some member states apply additional national rules. Remember, we've got EU rules and national rules, although EU rules are supposed to be in control for imports. For instance, Spanish authorities insist on inspecting the next 10 consignments of a product after a non-compliance finding. This is usually applied to livestock products, and it's not properly applied to almonds. And it's counter to Commission guidance. So both FAS Madrid and FAS Brussels continue to work on this situation with the Commission. I hope it is clear to you all that export success in the EU regulatory realm, minimizing disruption of shipments and keeping down your transaction costs, comes from a close partnership between FAS Brussels, the other FAS offices in Europe, and the Almond Board of California. FAS officers like me, Americans, rotate every 3 or 4 years. But we're fortunate to have a core of locally engaged staff who keep the trains running all the time. And on inspection in my office, that's Ms. Gerda van der Kammen, who's had the role for decades. Her integrity, knowledge, and incredible capacity to patiently communicate complicated issues in simplified terms keep the system working. It's incredible how much the Commission trusts Gerda. In closing, FAS Brussels and FAS in the other member states, along with the Almond Board of California work together as your partners for solving regulatory and inspection issues in the EU. Additionally, FAS can help with marketing and market development, but that's another story. Thank you very much. I hope you have a great conference. Goodbye.